If I had to make just one question, it would be just this. You referred to fake news that people are used to believe because they are not thinking only with their head but with their heart. The consequences of this are that new realities comes from all these things. Trump, Brexit, political developments everywhere. So what would you do in order now to face both? First of all, the fake news and the tension of the man to believe in this, and face the consequences.
You're asking me to solve might be the biggest problem in the world right now, and it's certainly the biggest problem in the communications world. So first of all, I'm not going to solve the entire problem here today with a couple of brilliant ideas. But I think that there are a couple of things that, as an industry, we can and should do. First thing is that we have to make sure that we are not part of the problem. We cannot, as an industry, say, okay, this fake news stuff obviously works. It got Trump elected and it got the UK out of the EU. It's very effective. We need to figure out how to do fake news ourselves. We cannot fall into that trap. And I can explain the reasons why, but I'm sure you understand why that would be a terrible thing for most companies to start to do. The second thing is we have to understand why fake news is so credible. To a certain extent, that comes back to the empathy point that I was making earlier. We have to understand both in terms of the human brain, cognitive science, but also in terms of just human feelings, why people want to believe what they apparently believe. And there are emotional reasons and there are circumstantial reasons that make people more prone to misinformation, conspiracy theories, and fake news. And as an industry, we need to understand why that happens. We need to, I think, work very hard to make people more media literate, to understand how the media works, what makes real media credible and what makes alternative media less credible, the processes that journalists go through in order to get a story printed in the Washington Post, as opposed to the processes that journalists go through in order to get a story printed in Breitbart. And forgive me for being very American in my examples, I have no idea what the Greek analogy to this would be. We need to, I think, as an industry, help people develop better critical thinking skills. So we need to help them understand why certain ideas are logical and make sense and why other ideas are not. If I can dive into it. So Donald Trump has claimed that 5 million people voted illegally in the United States election for Hillary Clinton. And he seems to believe this, and certainly many of his followers now believe it. I don't want to say impossible, because I don't think anything's quite impossible, but it is almost impossible that that happened. There have been studies of illegal voting in the United States that found that in a 14-year period from 2000 to 2014, there were 31 cases of illegal voting. Over a 14-year period, 31 cases. That would suggest that for 5 million people to have voted for Hillary Clinton illegally, first of all, the Democrats would have had to be so smart that they figured out a way to do that without anybody on the Republican side ever hearing about it. This requires a conspiracy of at least 5 million people, none of whom has ever confessed to voting illegally, none of whom was ever caught. It would also have to suggest that the Democrats are so much smarter than the Republicans that the Republicans have not only not figured out how to do it themselves, they haven't figured out how to catch a single one of those people. You start, and the idea of if the four of us agreed to keep a secret about this meeting, right, today, by the weekend, 100 other people would know that secret. One of us would say something. You cannot. That kind of conspiracy. For 5 million people, we're journalists, so we tell everybody. But for 5 million people to keep a secret is literally insane. And so to believe that, your critical thinking skills have to be non-existent. Right? You have to switch off your brain completely and just not think about the reality of the situation. And we need to teach that kind of critical thinking skills. Now, there are some people out there who are deliberately not thinking critically.